Hey guys, this is Miss Arlequin, and in this video we are going to be learning our new set of vocabulary words, which come from Monster, pages 89 to 160. So as usual, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your vocabulary sheet and you're going to rate your prior knowledge of our new vocabulary words. The first word is cacophony. Second is salvation. Third is compassion. 4 is respective. 5 is dismay, and 6 is glower. All right, so let's start with cacophony. A cacophony is a mishmash of unpleasant sounds, often at a loud volume. It's what you'd hear if you gave instruments to a group of 4-year-olds and you asked them to play one of Beethoven's symphonies. Clearly, that's not going to go well, unless all of those 4-year-olds are musical geniuses. So a cacophony is really just a harsh noise. You could use it, again, to describe anything that is just a really loud, unpleasant sound. Usually it's a lot of sounds together, though. You usually don't describe just one particular sound being a cacophony. It usually has to be a group of sounds. The noise rose to a cacophony that drowned out all other sounds. All right, our next word is salvation. Salvation is the act of saving from sin or evil, or sometimes just saving from an unpleasant situation. The connotation is usually religious, but it doesn't always have to do with religion. If a freak snowstorm on your camping trip has you scared that your life is on the line, you're going to die from hypothermia, then salvation can come in the form of an abandoned house with a working fireplace. Or people can be your salvation. Anyone who saves you from a dire situation is your salvation. So Jerry's salvation came when the Coast Guard found him drifting at sea. So in this case, the people are the salvation, and the harm is that they're lost at sea and they were going to either die from lack of food or lack of water or the sun. So again, salvation is the act of saving or protecting from harm. Next is compassion. When I think about the word compassion, I always associate it with the word empathy. Compassion is showing someone kindness, caring, and having a willingness to help others. If you show these traits, then you're showing compassion. So it's a word that is a very positive emotion, positive connotation. It has to do with being thoughtful and decent. Giving to a charity, you have to have compassion in order to do that. Volunteering to work with sick people or animals takes compassion. Basically, when you have compassion, you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes, empathy, and you're really feeling for them. Anytime a disaster like a hurricane or earthquake or a tsunami hits, a lot of times people will feel compassion for the victims. And usually when you feel compassion for someone, you really want to help out, which is why people who give to charities are clearly feeling compassion. If you give money to the homeless people on the street, you're feeling compassion. So I have nothing but compassion for that poor mother who has lost her children. I feel really bad for her. Deep sympathy. And you can also use this word as an adjective, so you could describe yourself as being a compassionate person. All right, our next word is respective. Respective is an adjective that means something that belongs or relates to each one of the people or things that have been mentioned. All right, I know that's a very confusing definition. But if something is respective, it belongs to these people. So the chairs were all respective. They all belong to each individual roommate. This chair belonged to roommate number 1. This one belonged to number 2. This one belonged to number 3. All right, I think I need to go into more detail about this word. So here, when you think about respective, it usually is used to indicate or show the order of things. The order in which the stuff you're talking about is related to each other. So like if you said Michael Phelps and Michael Jordan excelled in swimming and basketball respectively. In this sentence, you're not saying that both of these Michaels are really great at both swimming and basketball. What you're saying is Michael Phelps, you mentioned him first, and then you mentioned swimming as the first activity. So Michael Phelps was the first person you mentioned. Swimming was the first activity. When you add respectively, you're saying that this activity, number 1, matches up with this person, number 1. And then Michael Jordan, you mentioned second, and you mentioned basketball second. That's what respectively does. It takes the groups that you mentioned in the beginning of the sentence, and the activities that you mentioned at the end of the sentence and matches them up together. So it's a word that lines things up in order so that they match. You might say that pizza and meatloaf are your favorite and least favorite foods, respectively. So what does that mean? It means pizza number one is your number one favorite food, and meatloaf, you mentioned second, is your least favorite food because that's what you mentioned second. If you and your sister were voted most improved and MVP in a basketball league, respectively, then you got better and your sister was the best. Again, you mentioned yourself first, and then you mentioned most improved first. So that matches you with most improved. You mentioned your sister second, and then you mentioned being MVP second, which matches your sister with being the most valuable player. Again, you're just matching it up. All right, our next word is dismay. Dismay is an emotion. It's when you feel a strong feeling of being worried, disappointed, or upset. Usually, the sentence is used to say, to the dismay of, much to the dismay of my mother, much to the dismay of my grandmother, much to the dismay of her fans, she announced her retirement immediately after the book's release. You look at the fans' faces and you can see they are feeling dismay. They're feeling worried, they're feeling disappointed, they're feeling upset. If you discover late Sunday night that the dog really did eat your homework, then you might cry out in dismay. Dismay describes the emotional state of alarm, fear, or serious disappointment. All right, and our final word is glower. Glower is a verb. If you're glowering at somebody, you're looking at them in an angry way. So when you talk in the library, the librarian might glower at you. The librarian glowered at us when she heard us laughing. She's looking at you angrily. If you see someone glower at you, you might consider glowering back. But no one likes an angry staring contest. To glower is not only to stare, it's to stare angrily, as if you're going to throttle somebody. So you can remember this word by thinking about the root of this word, glow. A person that glowers usually seems to glow with anger. That's how strong the anger is. So glowering is a lot stronger of a connotation than just saying that someone looked at you angrily. All right, so now it's time to apply our new words to our own sentences. Take each of the words, write your example sentence. See if for bonus points you can use some of the previous vocabulary words. And as always, make sure you bring this vocabulary sheet to class tomorrow.